Hello, and welcome to the latest edition of From the Horse's Mouth podcast. I'm your host, Fersht, and joining me today is the head of IBM Consulting himself, Mohamad Ali. It's great to have you on here. I'd love to learn a bit more today, obviously, about you, but also where is IBM going with its whole strategy around, we call this services as software, and around all the things that you're trying to do since you've joined the company. Perhaps you could start with a bit of your background. And I know you were at IBM in your earlier career, and then you came back a couple of years ago.
Well, first of all, Phil, thank you very much for having me on From the Horse's Mouth, which is convenient given that it's the year of the horse. When it started off. That's right. I came back to IBM a couple of years ago. I actually started my career at a small company after graduating from college called Neural Applications Corporation. We actually built neural networks, and we eventually sold the company. I joined IBM and was here for about 14 years. I worked in the software business for much of that time. I left, I was CEO of two companies, and then once the IBM took a big swing at becoming the leader in enterprise AI, I thought it was a good time to come back and rejoin the company, and this time not in software, but in consulting.
Right. And how much of an adaptation has that been for you personally? Because a lot of people have gone from services into software, and it's a difficult transition. But going from where you came from into the services business during a time where there's so much change in technology, evolution happening. Tell me what's been going on. What's it been like?
Yeah, actually, it's been fascinating because, I mean, if you think about what's going on, and you used the term very early, right, which is services as software. So a lot of services is now getting encapsulated in bits of software, right? So these digital workers that we're building that help our human workers do work much more efficiently, well, they're bits of software. And in my past life, that's what I helped build, right? I built software. And so one of the first things that we did when I rejoined the company here was to start thinking about how do we create a platform that allows our consultants to very easily build these bits of software in a way that is reusable throughout the organization and is also reusable with our clients. And so effectively, we started building a software business within IBM Consulting about 2 years ago. And today we have about 3,000 of these unique digital workers that we deploy on our project. So in some ways, having that software background is probably a big reason why Arvind asked me to come into consulting and help try to transform consulting as it moves into this new era.
Right. So when you say you have a few thousand digital workers deployed, are you saying those are deployed to service your clients, or they're deployed within your clients?
So a little bit of both. We built these 3,000 unique digital workers, and they're in 134 packages. So you can imagine each one of these packages has about 30 digital workers that do a particular thing, right? So in one case, we have a set of digital workers that work in your cybersecurity operations center, and they do threat investigations. It used to be that you would give a particular threat to a person to go investigate it because it warranted that level of work. And now you would hand it off to these agents. These agents would do the investigation. They would plan the investigation. They would run the investigation. They would write up the report. They would highlight all kinds of things. And then they would hand it over to a human being to verify all of this, right? So it's still very much human in the loop. But that's an example of how these digital workers are used. Now, in that particular case, they could be used by us to provide the service to our client, or it could be used by our client to provide that service for themselves.
You talk a lot around consulting advantage and how this has impacted the way that you're going to market. How seismic has the change been for such a traditional firm like IBM, and how have you battled with it?
Pretty seismic, and I mean, in a great way, right? I mean, you've probably seen our performance, and we've been doing fairly well. And a part of that is us deploying AI on ourselves. So within consulting, as you mentioned the name IBM Consulting Advantage, we built this software platform that allowed us to create these 3,000 digital workers. And this was an ongoing process. Like, we're always creating more, we're finding what we have. But IBM Consulting Advantage serves as that effectively software platform that allows us to deploy these digital workers along with our human colleagues on these projects. And we have in excess of 200 major projects now where we are delivering it with this type of an approach.
Right. And would you say this has been more of a push onto your clients, or they're pulling you in saying, we want this type of offering?
It's definitely a pull. I mean, now when you show up at clients will say, well, in the old days, you used to be able to do this project for this much cost. Now we want it done for this much cost, which is, mostly always less, right? And sometimes meaningfully less. And the reason they get to that point is they expect that you are going to be using these modern technologies, these AI technologies, and deploying it within your process in order to deliver that value to them. Now, oftentimes they say, well, that's great. I want this piece of work at this less cost. But one of the good things about the business is that frees up some part of their budget. And oftentimes they will redeploy that budget for some sort of innovation project. And so it is very much an expectation now of the clients that we are delivering with human plus digital labor.
What's fascinating is, and I was reading about, I think, Javan's principle, that the more you can provide efficiency and intelligence at cheaper prices, the more your clients actually want. So ultimately, how do you make more money out of your clients? Because they're saying, hey, look, you've been delivering these services for 20 years and we've been spending, 10 million a year. Now we want to spend less. So how do you say, right, we're going to deliver back to you what we've been doing for unto perpetuity, but we think we can deliver it at significantly less cost because of the technology, but we're now going to start delivering you more data, more alignment, more strategy. Is that the goal? Is it like, how can we actually now move up the chain and start to get more intimate?
And make it even simpler for you, right? Like, so you commented on that principle. And, if you go back in history, whether decades or centuries, one of the things that you'll notice is that every time there has been a major technological inflection that has lowered the cost of production, the GDP has actually increased and increased meaningfully, right? And so then let's apply that to ourselves in the technology space, right? So when cloud came into existence, the cost of developing apps went down dramatically because you go to the cloud would have all these pre-configured building blocks. You'd be able to build these things very quickly. And so what happened? It's not like the market declined. Actually, what happened was that there was more demand for cloud-based applications, right? And so the market grew. When it came to the mobile, for example, the iPhone, it used to be that we would build these monolithic apps. When the iPhone and these mobile apps came along, again, it was very much easier to build these apps. But what happened? People wanted not hundreds of large apps; they wanted millions of these tiny apps. So, we all got into the business of building all these mobile apps for our clients to do all kinds of things, right? From major food companies to airline bookings, apps, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think the principle that you just laid out is, I think we have seen this over and over, and I actually think it's going to repeat itself. So what's happening in our time now with AI? So clients are now coming to us. We have a client, the partner who's working on it, which is in my office yesterday, and he was saying, hey, listen, the client asked us to build these 3 agents for them, and we did it, and it delivered this value. Now they want another 3, and now they want a factory to build all these agents, right? So this is not stuff that we used to do before, but all of a sudden, instead of having millions of mobile apps, we're going to have trillions of agents. And somebody's got to build those agents. So this is all incremental work in some ways to what we do today. Now, to your point, the work that we do today, a lot of it can be delivered at lower costs. And the clients are expecting to be able to get that savings and then redeploy it on all these new things, like these digital workers that they hadn't envisioned before, but now they can envision them, they can put them to work. So I think your principle is actually going to play out.
Yeah, because it's like, if you're, say, just delivering, I don't know, some sort of transactional finance for a client, which is kind of flat anyway, they want to save money. Once you show this is how we work together to build agents, train your people, think differently, you're going to be the first one they come to say, right, how can we now do this in marketing? How can we do this in supply chain? So it's a whole new capability that's evolving, and it's becoming more horizontal, right? Because it's like once you learn how to manage these technology, it doesn't matter if it's in finance or it's in marketing or it's in sales, because it's about how do you do it. It's about a different mindset, right?
It's a different mindset. And I think those words really matter because you're going to be able to create business models that just didn't exist before, right? And we are starting to see that with some of our clients where within their existing business, they're doing things that just couldn't have been done before. And I can give you some examples. And we're also seeing businesses come into existence that couldn't have come into existence before, right? Because of AI. And so maybe I'll give you one example of a traditional business that started using AI, and they couldn't have actually done what I'm talking about before. And so this particular business makes electronic components. So Phil, if you were going to go build a data center, the data center was going to cost you, $1 billion. You'd probably buy $5 million worth of these connectors from this company. And the connectors are probably $1 each, right? And so they would get these orders for $5 million worth of individual components, and somebody would have to match this up to their catalog and so forth, right? And this could take days. And so they asked us to build an agent for them that allow them to do this in minutes, right? So that's a traditional process that all of a sudden you can do in a shorter period of time. The CEO comes along and sees this and says, hey, I don't view this as just an efficiency gain. I view this as incredible insights into what I'm selling to my clients. So what I'd like you to do is if you could look at my catalog and figure out what I've got, can you look at everybody else's catalog because it's all open and figure out what they have and what's available? And so things that are not available in lots and lots of places, let's put some sort of price premium on it. And all of a sudden, this becomes a revenue generator for the company, a growth driver for the company. And so if you think about that, technology from 3 years ago could not have done this. You could not create a business model like this. So all of a sudden, you have your agents mining the world so that you can have, better pricing efficiency. Now, you play that out and you say, well, the competitor is going to figure this out at some point and they're going to hire somebody else, not IBM Consulting, but one of our competitors to build agents that do the exact same thing the opposite way. And then you have sort of an agent on agent economy, right? So think about how this thing is unfolding, and it's unfolding in a way that, with the technology from 3 years ago, this could not have happened, but now it's happening.
So how do you win as a services-led company in this market? Is it through just training the best talent and acquiring the best talent, changing your reward structures around that, or is this something else?
Well, I think it's at least twofold, right? And you touched on one of them, and the other one we've been talking about, which is I think you need the best technology and you need to build the best digital workers, right? Because, if you go out there and you use a standard model is trained on the internet. It's not trained on sort of the very specific things that enterprises do. And so these enterprises are all going to need unique digital workers for finance processes and HR processes and procurement processes and so forth. And it's going to have to be plumbed into their systems, right, in order to work. And that's why we built IBM Consulting Advantage, because we needed this ability to build these digital workers, in kind of an enterprise environment and plumb them into the systems. And then on the other side is to have a set of incredibly talented engineers and consultants who know how to use these tools in the best possible way, right? So, I talk about human plus digital labor. There's a lot packed in there, right? You need to have the best human labor and you need to have the best digital labor, right? Which is the technology, and you put those together. And I think that gives you a competitive advantage.
And has this brought IBM Consulting almost closer to your software business? Because I remember before you took over, there was a lot of, before the big wave hit us in 2022, there was always the talk around, should IBM Consulting deliver third-party technology or IBM technology? Has that changed now, do you feel, with the agentic wave?
Well, it gives us an advantage to have access to all these software engineers, right? So when I rejoined IBM and I joined IBM Consulting, I needed a set of software engineers to go build IBM Consulting Advantage because I needed to be enterprise grade product quality, et cetera. And I got those software engineers by going over to our software colleagues and say, hey, can I have 100 software engineers to start? And they moved them over and we got going, right? And today we've been building up that software capability, and we don't have to replicate everything. We use the same software process methodologies that tried and true. There are all these capabilities that are already built that we don't have to go and rebuild. In IBM Consulting, we can leverage that. Having said that, I mean, our partners are extraordinarily important, and at least half of our business is associated with some sort of partner. And so we have 33,000 Microsoft certified professionals, right? So our Microsoft business is a very important business. Our Amazon business, our SAP business, our Salesforce business, et cetera. So these partners that bring other technologies to the table, Anthropic, right? These other technologies are absolutely essential for us to bolt together with IBM technologies to bring the best to the client.
What do you take on what Dario's been obviously having? They're having a bit of an existential crisis. I don't know what's going on, but there's a lot of talk around, the impact on the industry and humanity and all this sort of stuff. But what's your take on Anthropic coming out saying we're going to now really eat into SaaS apps, work apps, we're going to really take it over? Do you see this as generally existential, or it's just creating more opportunity for companies like yourselves?
Well, I do think it creates more opportunity for technology companies and technology-based consulting companies, right? And we happen to have both parts of that. Having said that, I think there's going to be a shift in the kind of work that people do, because some of this work is going to get automated. But we've experienced automation, decade after decade after decade. It happens to be quite a bit faster this time around. I think every time it's faster, right? So certain processes are going to get automated. Coding, for example, I think a lot of that is going to get automated. And so what that's going to do is the people who are going to code less are going to be required to architect things and design things and so forth, right? So people are going to have to retrain themselves. I mean, if you're in procurement and now, a big part of your work is using an agent to do your work, you're going to have to reskill yourself to be one of those people who know how to use an agent, right? I mean, we actually have an employee like that I met the other day, and she's a 17-year expert on financial reconciliation. And we built a set of digital workers and gave it to her, and she uses these now, and she is so proud of it because her client is an external CFO in another company, a big publicly traded company, and she now has way more confidence in the accuracy and the quality of this financial reconciliation than she had before, because she actually has more tools to do it better and more time to double check it, right? And so there's somebody who actively embraced this technology, adapted to it, and is now a leader. Like, I am absolutely confident that person is going to continue to evolve in a very, very positive way as the technology automates parts of what she does, right? And so I think we're going to need to have people who are willing to retrain themselves. And those who are not willing to retrain themselves are going to be impacted somehow.
I couldn't agree with this more. And I've got so many personal and professional examples of people who thrived in this situation. And I've got friends who are literally saying, right, I'm getting out of accounting, I'm going to do something else.
That friend of yours, right? I don't know which one is your friend, but the person who said I'm getting out of accounting, that's kind of interesting. But the person who said, hey, listen, I'm going to use accounting to create a whole new business model for my accounting business. I mean, I think that person's going to do very well.
Yeah, you're spot on. Well, this is fantastic. Just talking like this, I've enjoyed talking around services as software and watching it evolve to the point where it's now headline news, and yes, it's causing some disruption. But I think I've never personally been so excited as an analyst covering this space, and the excitement and the sheer, I don't know, energy, a little bit of fear, a little bit of anxiety. I mean, this is what drives an industry, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's exciting. And Phil, I remember, I think I met you 2 years ago when I joined, right? And I think, I don't know if it was in that first meeting or a second meeting or a third meeting, I think you mentioned this concept, services as software. And I thought about it and I realized that is exactly what we're building, right? And so I think you've been at the forefront of thinking about it, but it is an exciting time. This market is changing. And I mean, why not want to be part of this?
Yeah, well, I think so much of it is because we're using so many of these tools personally in our own lives, both personal and professional lives. So we're seeing ourselves like, I go to work on a Monday and I don't want to tolerate using old systems that don't integrate and old mindsets, because I'm living differently. So I think a lot of this, we call it the velocity gap between our personal experiences and capabilities and what we're seeing and experiencing in our companies. And if our companies aren't keeping up with us, we're going to go work somewhere else. So a lot of this is adapting that corporate mindset to being more open, thinking differently and trying to be less sort of nervous about the future?
On the consumer side, AI is everywhere, and it's become part of our lives. And the idea that we wouldn't be as aggressively using that technology in the enterprise, is just misplaced. We have to. The other day I was talking to my son, and I said to him that I was at this party and there were two people with the same birthday. And he said, well, do you know that if you're in a room and there are 23 people, there's over a 50% chance that this is true? And I was like, wow, that's kind of interesting. So I actually started trying to prove it mathematically. I ran into some issues. So of course, I go to an AI tool and I ask it, and it provides this incredibly just simple proof as to why that is true. And so then I called my son back and we chatted about it because he's sort of mathematically interested too, right? And so, this is just like a silly example of how it's infiltrated our lives. People are obviously using it for planning vacations and whatever else, right? But it's in all of our lives in all these different ways. And so I think those leaders who are not aggressively embracing it are going to fall behind, because those who do are going to get a lot of benefit, and it's here.
I think you're absolutely right. I think my wife's ChatGPT actually knows me. I could probably just go and chat to it and go, hey, Phil, hey.
There you go. You're being automated, right?
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Well, this is great. Really enjoyed you joining the podcast, and looking forward to everyone hearing our conversation. It'll be good fun, and seeing you again pretty soon.
Thanks for tuning in to From the Horse's Mouth, Intrepid Conversations with Phil Fersht. Remember to follow Phil on LinkedIn and subscribe and like on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favourite platform for no-nonsense takes on the intricate dance between technology, business, and ideological systems. Got something to add to the discussion? Let's have it. Drop us a line at fromthehorsesmouth@hfsresearch.com or connect with Phil on LinkedIn.